So welcome to Movie Club, everybody. Tonight we're going to be discussing Ode to Muir with our guest, Jeremy Jones. And Jeremy, as many of you know, is an accomplished filmmaker, entrepreneur, environmentalist, and snowboarding pioneer. Jeremy Jones is widely regarded as one of the most legendary big mountain riders and explorers of all time. He was named a 2013 National Geographic Adventurer of the Year and 11 times voted the best big mountain rider of the year by Snowboarder magazine. Jeremy has starred in over 50 snowboard movies worldwide, including his highly acclaimed foot-powered snowboarding trilogy, Deeper, Further, and Higher. He's the founder and CEO of award-winning Jones Snowboards, dedicated to the development of the highest quality backcountry snowboards and accessories. In 2007, Jeremy founded Protect Our Winters, a global cause uniting the winter sports community against climate change, and was recognized in 2013 as a champion of change by President Barack Obama. So we're gonna do a discussion here for about 45 to an hour. And first we're gonna hear a little bit more about POW and about Ode to Muir from Jeremy with some questions that we've submitted to him. But for those of you who are new in the audience, please feel free to submit questions as we go. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to hit those along the way. So with that, let's begin. So Jeremy, great to see you again. We've met a few times in the past, and a big fan of everything that you do, both with your snowboarding and also with your activism. So great to be here. And you know, we know you as somebody who's founded Jones Snowboards, and then POW, the nonprofit that we love so much. Can you just tell us a little bit about your history and really just what inspired you to become so involved with conservation with everything that you've got going on?
Yeah, so I grew up on Cape Cod at the highest point, 200 feet above sea level. So naturally, I fell in love with snowboarding. And no, but out of all seriousness, my grandfather got really into Vermont and snow. My parents got into it relatively late in life when we were kids. And so they were somewhat, I mean, they knew how to ski, but we never had a season pass or anything until we got, I think I was like 2 years old is when my parents probably got their first season pass. And so we would go to the mountain and it was basically drop us off. We'd meet at lunch and at the end of the day and had total freedom. But at that time, I mean, I enjoyed skiing for sure, but it was when snowboarding came along that I just got totally hooked on it and knew right away, well, I guess when I started snowboarding, it wasn't allowed on lifts for a couple of years. And then once it was allowed on lifts and I got to experience lift service snowboarding, that's when I really got head over heels over it. At that time, I was about 12 years old, been playing serious hockey my whole life and played some other sport, played football, played lacrosse, and those sports really went away fast. And I'm just like, there's no such thing as a snowboard industry. But I knew that I'd say by 14, I'm figuring out how to snowboard every day. And it was funny because my brothers who started Teton Gravity Research, who I made this film with, you know, we watched my dad work really hard to get to the mountains, and some weekends he'd have to stay home for work and what have you. And over time, my brothers and I started connecting with the best skiers on the mountain, these older guys, and we're like, so how often do you ski? And they're like, every day. And we're like, well, what do you do for work? And they're like, well, we, you know, wait tables, 10 bar at night. And then in the summer we paint houses. And that's basically exactly what my brothers and I did for a long time. And we came home, we're like, Dad, this is incredible. Like, you don't have to go back and forth. We're driving 5 hours to get to the mountains we're like, you just paint houses and tend bar. You can go on the mountain every day. And so that is what led me to a path of pro snowboarding. really fell in love with backcountry snowboarding. To do that safely and effectively, you got to be really connected with the mountains. In doing that, I started noticing change to the mountains, and that led me, to realize that coincided with what scientists were telling us, and
Yeah.
I just felt like, as a outdoor industry with science telling us snow is changing, me seeing snow is changing, I'm like, we got to do something.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I couldn't really. There was no group that I could identify with,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
what kind of somewhat reluctantly and timidly started Protect Our Winters.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then what led to this film, and specifically you started POW, and then how did the two come together for the film?
Yeah, so I fell shortly after I started Protect Our Winters, about 10 years earlier. It was about 10 years. Well, no. So I started Protect Our Winters, started to understand my impact my snowboarding was having on the environment. That coupled with, at that point, I was making a lot. You talked about making 50 films. So those were, that the majority of those were shot in the spring in Alaska with the use of a helicopter. That world just started kind of closing in, both understanding the resources for that.
Yeah.
Helicopters can only go to about 5% of the mountains. And that split board technology was kind of been flat for a while, but a new binding came out that improved it. And I just realized, I'm like, man, if I can figure out how to go in the mountains and stay out there for long periods of time, I can, I'll have 95% more mountains to choose from. And as someone whose life was based around finding the most beautiful mountains in the world, that haven't been snowboarding, it would be this like dream come true. Started hiking these mountains, started getting, it was just such a invigorating experience camping there. Some of these lines would take 20 days waiting out storms, and the highs and the connection I was having with nature were so much greater than a chairlift, a snowmobile, or a helicopter. And at the end of the day, my snowboard or your skis is a tool to connect with nature and push yourself, and at times have these incredibly intense adrenaline euphoric moments. And on foot, that was just like multiplied 100x. So I did a trilogy on that, Deeper, Further, Higher, that instead of making like 5 movies a year, I was making 1 movie every 2 years. Finished that, and really, and that the last line of that trilogy, I'm in the Himalaya, this really intense, serious line that I ended up calling Shangri-La. And I'm like, my backyard had been where I was doing the majority of my snowboarding to prepare for this stuff. But I wanted to really figure out, really, as soon as I went to foot powered snowboarding, how to get deep into the Sierra. The problem is the Sierra is it's very protected, which is awesome. Yeah. But my hardest days would be in the Sierra, so I really had to refine my whole kit and figure out how to be able to go out for long periods of time. I think the Ode to Muir trip was 10 days and be self-supported, and that. What I liked about that is I love when I find myself in the mountains at a spot and go, I couldn't have been here a day earlier in my life because I needed all this stuff to get me here. Meaning knowledge, fitness, skill set. And if I can do that, I just know that means I'm moving forward. I like moving forward. I don't like, if I find myself on the best day of the year on a line I rode 5 years ago, I'm like, you're just taking up space at that point. Sorry.
That's awesome. And your backyard now is Tahoe, right? Or has been for.
Yeah. And Lake Tahoe, I've called home. for a long time, over 20 years. I have two
Yeah.
kids that are, I'm raising here, and
Yeah.
yeah, so the
When
High
you said,
Sierra is is all where Ode to Muir is. That trailhead's like 4 hours from my house. The Sierra is 400 miles long, and I'm in the northern part of it.
yeah, right. And when you said the conditions were kind of some of the toughest or to deal with from an environmental standpoint, is that just because of the temperature changes and the snow being super wet, or was it the length of the season started to change? What were the things that clued you into a lot of change was happening? You needed to,
With climate
yeah, yeah,
specifically,
yeah,
yeah. I was seeing low, like one example would be I was in like a low elevation resort in northern Canada that was no longer open because of climate change, or because it stopped snowing there. I'd gotten to be friends with some locals. We were hiking their resort. It was all grass in February. They had a lot of pride. They were talking about how, um, showing me their base lodge that was now closed and their snack shack. As we're hiking, I'm like, well, why isn't it open anymore? And they said it just doesn't snow here anymore. And I was like, wow, these guys are not that old.
yeah,
They've lost their ski resort in 20 years. What are we going to see in the next 20 years?
yeah,
That coincided with time I spent with what I was seeing in Chamonix.
yep,
I used to work with Rossignol, which is a French-based ski
sure,
snowboard company, and so I would frequent the Chamonix and the Vallée Blanche, which is a long classic glacier run, and they have really clear history of their glaciers there because they literally live amongst them, and you can see this glacier that is retreating back, that dates back to like early 1900s. They have marks on the ground, and then it just starts really accelerating. You know, Now even today, now it's really getting
yeah, yeah,
wild there with lift stations moving because permafrost and what have you. But
yeah,
so examples like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, so everybody who's listening, just wanted to make sure everybody know there's a poll that if you want to take the poll and just tell a little bit about yourself, please do. And so, Jeremy, you're talking about some of the helicopter trips and things that you did there, and the people around you are very connected to the outdoors. How have you tried to take this message or some of the things you're doing to a broad audience and trying to bring people into what you do?
Well, first thing is like, um, I don't think you should need to apply to care about climate.
Yeah,
And so, as at Protect Our Winters, we definitely show you how to reduce your personal footprint. But it's not about, I think that one thing is it's like you feel like, oh, I care about the environment, but I drive the wrong car, or I love nothing more than a glass of wine and a T-bone steak. I'm told I'm not allowed to care about the environment. Or maybe I am a heli ski operator,
yeah,
or what have
yeah,
what it may what have you. But the reality is, we are plugged into this fossil fuel society that's heavily subsidized, and to do meaningful change, and this isn't to discredit personal carbon footprint, which I've, since I started Protect Our Winters, I've tried to improve every
yeah.
year, and I
Not easy.
definitely live an examined life, but we recognize that we need leaders that
Yeah.
embrace a clean energy future, and that's a lot of the work that Protect Our Winters is doing right now.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. One of the you had I loved in the movie how you brought in different stats with the different infographics and stuff. And one of the things that blew me away, I grew up in California. My dad was a farmer, and so water was always something that you talked about. And one of the stats that blew me away was I can't even remember the percentage of water for California that came from the southern Sierras, but it was something like 60%. And
Yeah,
the
that's what it was. Yeah.
stats on how much we're going to be affected by the change blew me away. But the stat that blew me away the most was the percentage of climate deniers we have in the Senate.
Yeah, and
I could
Congress
not believe
and
it.
in the White
And you
House.
talked about leadership, and I think that's really great that you're focusing in on, connecting or trying to change the minds of some of those leaders, because I think it was more than 50% in the Senate are currently climate deniers, which I almost fell out of my chair when I saw that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's become this bipartisan issue,
Yeah,
and it's been really frustrating every year. Protect our winners, which when I started this, I never thought it would have been political.
yeah,
Um, the original stuff we had coming out was like use reusable water bottles, change your light bulbs, which
yeah,
all important stuff, but isn't going to get our CO2 reduction to the level that we need it to. But for up until recently, I mean, we couldn't even get we started going to Capitol Hill starting in I think 2010, like 3 years in, and realized that's where we need to win. And it was just to so we would focus our effort on moderate Republicans, recognizing that they're the missing link to get climate policy
yeah,
passed. And up until last fall, we couldn't even get them to mention the word climate change or just that there might be
wow,
any issue on climate. That's definitely changed in the last year, and I think it's changed because of voter pressure, quite
yeah,
frankly. And they
yeah,
realize that this like ignoring climate change and like excluding it from their dictionary is not working, and so
yeah,
it's changed a little bit. So I do think that the science is so clear and we're seeing effects of it, and hopefully we get the younger vote out there, that I do think that it's becoming, depending on what state, say a senator or congressman is from, that I think that behind the scenes, there are some Republicans ready to hopefully be some climate leaders.
yeah, yeah. Well, and probably some of the things that make them tune in are it seems like there's more awareness around the impact, the positive impact that tourism can have, right? And snow sports industry. When you look at everything in total, particularly in the more fragile regions, do you still feel like snow sports has a more positive impact than a negative impact? And what do you think the future might be for snow sports?
So I think that any means that gets people outside is really a positive thing. I think that you largely need to fall in love with nature to want to protect it. And I think a ski resort has created a lot of environmentalists.
Yeah,
It's also creates a ton of jobs. And I think it brings a lot of happiness to a lot of people. And I think that that in itself is a really positive stuff. So I think it has the opportunity. I mean, when we go to Washington, D.C., we go there talking about jobs. You're
yeah,
dealing, the outdoor industry is an $800 billion industry. It's bigger than the pharmaceutical industry. It's bigger than the extraction industry. But we just collectively have not come together to say, hey, we represent we are a huge industry, and we want you to vote for our future of the health of our industry. And I think if we can do that, we can do a lot of really positive stuff and get the change that we need.
yeah, that's great. And then I heard you guys are PAL's come out with the outdoor state campaign.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what you guys are trying to achieve with that?
Yeah, so the outdoor state is, we recognize that there are 50 million people. That could be everyone from, your skiers, snowboarders, bikers, climbers, but even the canoer, the bird watcher, just people that recognize the outdoors as a big part of their life, or their life is largely based around that. And that traditionally this group has not been the greatest voters. And so if we think of it as the ultimate swing state, that if all these outdoor enthusiasts get out to vote, that we can, be that difference maker in the election. And so on top of that, we, have a little bit more acute focus on the outdoor state in these key regions where a couple thousand votes could be the difference between a climate champion and a climate denier in office.
Yeah, that's cool. And so, yeah, I see we got up on the screen here. So you can essentially text to that that number, and your voice gets counted within that. Love it.
Yeah, and another what there's with this kind of changing times with the pandemic, this this issue of trying to get people signed up for mail-in ballots, which is more complicated than you would think. So we're developing a resource center for that, and this text to this, and that will get you plugged in. And
oh, that's cool.
There's just certain forms of ID, and it's a process depending on the state. Where I live, I've been mailing ballots in California since I was, mid-20s.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true. A lot of people don't know about it, but it gets the vote count up for sure.
Yeah.
So in the film, the other thing that was really cool to me is that I could tell for you, it was like a personal escape. And I was curious to ask you around these times with COVID, how is that personal escape and what you've done in the past and what you're doing right now? What's been going through your head around nature and how you get out in it, given the challenges right now?
Yeah. So it's cool you felt that. Like with this film, it was, we really wanted the viewer to go on, feel what it's like and see this natural transformation of what goes on there. But it's the most silence I've ever built into a film. Uh-huh. And I remember doing a sound check before the premiere, and I had a friend of mine with me, and we're pulling up different sections of the film, and be like 1 minute sections where it's like Elena and I are just walking, and he's, after a couple of these things, he's like, what's this film about? and so, yeah, I think, it depicts just the joy of getting out there. And as I get older, it's like, I've really gotten more out of less in the mountains. Like I think I was a little bit more like a good day required, like all these perfect conditions or what have you. I mean, I've always been what we call a love of sport guy, which can appreciate some world-class ice and some type 2, type 3 fun. But no, the outdoors for me is everything. We kind of casually refer to it as I'm a devout member of the Church of the 7-Day Recreationalists. That a mutual friend, I think Jim Zellers, brought me into that. And it's just, you realize, especially in these COVID times and these crazy times in this world of social media and connectivity, the outdoors have never been as important to me as they are now.
Yeah. I was able to get lucky and get a permit to go into Yosemite one of the first days it opened back up with my daughters, and you don't appreciate it until it gets taken away, and then you're up there and you're like, oh my God, yeah, this is why we come here. It was meant a lot. Yeah,
it's incredible. That I feel that gave me spine tingles, because I did just get a permit for Yosemite. I was just checking out a map for our route with my family.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, that's when I really like having, and it's funny, that exact thing, I remember getting on a volcano and standing on top of it when Shasta opened up and getting to the top and not thinking much of it, but had a very like emotional feeling. And that I said that exact thing, like, man, you don't realize how much you miss it till it's gone. And I
Yeah.
just,
Well, I think that's what's cool about your larger mission too, is you're trying to protect these things that we take for granted. So keep that going for sure. Couple other questions. When you think about POW and what you've done so far, like what do you think is the biggest victory? Is the first question. And then what do you think, if you think about this next election cycle, what is that one thing you'd love to see happen that would make you feel like it's a big achievement?
well, it's, the reality is people on the climate front, we have not had a lot of victories, but we do work hard to celebrate what victories we have. The Clean Air Act that passed, we did a lot of work on that, and got public support for that, and that's what led to getting recognized by the Obama administration as the champion for change, because we were able to put a really highlight the importance of this Clean Air Act. And the White House didn't know who we were until that. And after like a couple days after they had launched it and we had really leaned into it with our social media channels, we got a call from them going, who are you guys? Because you just brought a lot of eyeballs to this on a platform we don't even know how to navigate on. So that was pretty cool. We do these economic reports that explain the difference between a below average winter on the economy and an average winter on the economy. Some of those stats made it into an Obama speech. That was a positive, that was pretty exciting.
Yep.
In 2018, so I made Ode to Muir for the 2018 midterm elections.
Yeah.
And that's where, there was a couple key races that we were focused on. Montana was one of them. And specifically because Montana's a big extraction state. So Trump had been there 3 times. They hit the Senate race. John Tester's opponent. Tester's a great climate hero. Outspent him like 3x. And that race, towards the end of it, we got really focused, and it came down to like, of our kind of 5 elections we were really focused on, that one was coming down to the tightest one, and really rolled up our sleeves with another mutual friend, Conrad Anker. And he won by a couple thousand votes, and we could feel good about that. We definitely brought some of those votes to the table.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. How about this upcoming election? Anything you're honing in on? And like, I know it's tough.
So
I know it's tough to pick one right now, but
yeah, we look at and it, it's always changing, because you want to use your resources wisely. But we have an amazing policy director, Lindsay Bourgoin, and so we basically, just a little background to our process is, look at where this election could come down to a couple thousand votes, where we have a footprint there, meaning there's a strong outdoor state connection, and roll up our sleeves in that area. So that's Michigan, Nevada, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Maine. There's a key Senate race in Maine. Colorado, there's a couple down ballot issues in Colorado that are a big deal. And so, that's where we have this outdoor state, which is just get everyone out there. And then when it comes time to say more targeted advertising to get out the vote, that's where it'll be spent in those
swing states. That's awesome. Really cool. So let's see. We had somebody emailed in a question here, or typed it in. So here's the question. having grown up in the East, have you ever attempted any backcountry tours in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, like Tuckerman's Ravine? And if not, how about joining the POW New England Local Alliance on a backcountry tour? So you,
Yes, I love that question. I'm 0 for 2 on Tuckerman's Ravine, which I love. That to me, that adds another chapter to the Tuckerman's book. And Tuckerman's was actually the first place, I was about 15, I think, 14 or 15, where I went there on a February snowy winter day. Actually, we were actually just going to the base. So that was one of my deals. But I remember coming around the corner on this beautiful, fresh snow day and seeing above tree line for the first time. And it just was like to see terrain like that. It was surpassed my full imagination. And as far as New Hampshire, so I'm working on a film called Purple Mountains, which is my journey to understand why climate change is actually the most divided issue we have in the country right now.
Mhm.
And I had plans to go to New Hampshire pre-COVID. So it's very much on top of my list. And so I'm not sure who wrote that, but you will see me.
Yeah, I should have said that. This is Kent Van Viet. No, Vliet.
Kent Van Vliet. Okay, yes. So
Okay.
Kent, yes, I'm coming your way. Give me a little bit of window, but I will be there.
That's awesome. Right on. So when you, what I noticed in the movie too is you guys didn't shy away from showing how tough it is to get up to the top and to do what you were doing. And the woman, I forgot her name,
Elena Height.
Elena, yeah,
Yes.
she was awesome, and it was so cool to see her like kind of adapt and get more and more into it. But can you speak a little bit about how as you got into the outdoors, how you balance and what's your view on it now of the work versus the reward, and how do you pull in people who skiing in a lot of cases there's not a lot of people who want to go do the climb. They want to take the lift. How do you seem like so many bridges bringing people more into the sport and the harder part of the backcountry part? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, it's for sure naturally people are finding the backcountry, and we're seeing it with more crowded trailheads. And the reality is, it is to go out and just park your car and skin up or hike up 2,000 feet if you have the right equipment on the right day and are properly fueled and not dressed for like winter camping, meaning you're not a hot mess, just sweating profusely. It's not that hard to do simple backcountry riding, and I think that at the end of the day, that's the trick is just just breaking down everything into this one step at a time, and wherever you are in the sport. And what's important to note is every one of those steps is really exciting, and there is a level of envy that I have for not for the person who is putting a snowboard on for the first time, but because it is brutal. Your first couple of runs on a snowboard is it's like you have two left feet. But when I see someone that's maybe day 10 into their snowboarding world and they're linking turns down a blue square, they're going to their level of improvement will come run after run after run. And it's the same thing with the backcountry. Like there's no reason to skip steps. Go to start with the side country, start with the most simple stuff, and it's really you're kind of like a cheap drunk at that point, where to experience something new and fresh can be done right off the side of the road. So I guess who's ever out there thinking about getting into these sports, I highly recommend it, or thinking about doing it in the backcountry, just don't skip steps. And there's no reason to skip steps, because you missed out on an opportunity to experience something new, and why just blow through 20 steps and go from like, a small baby hill to like heli boarding in Alaska. Like,
there's no reason.
That's
good advice. on that advice side, so I've got two daughters, and sometimes the sustainability, environmental stuff actually causes stress for them. Like they they feel like
How
it's,
old are they?
so an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. And growing up, when they would hear us talk about it, it would, like it just seemed too big to even make a dent in, and they get involved with stuff now, and
Yeah.
but do you have any advice for, like, how do you, and I don't know if Pal's doing stuff with younger generation. I think you are in schools and things like that, but
Yeah.
how do you make the message so that it's not so heavy or so daunting that kids feel like they could get involved in it?
Well, I'd love to get some advice on you from having my kids are 12 and 14, so 12 and 15. I got a 15 recently turned 15-year-old daughter, so we're just getting into, yeah, we're right behind you. But I can't give like perfect advice to a kid. I can just say for me, because I get overwhelmed at times,
Yeah.
and I think that um, having a good plan, doing, focusing, it's just like climbing these mountains. Like,
Yeah.
what's the step that I can do to like move the needle forward? And so when I think of like, we have the most important election of our lifetime ahead of us. And I actually equate it a lot to, like climbing a big mountain, like climbing Mount Everest, for example, where it's when you roll into those mountains, it really is one step at a time. The good news is we do have a pretty darn good trail map in the form of clean energy is getting cheaper and cheaper. It's employing people. So unlike, say, the unknowns of COVID with climate, we have a really good guidebook that's going to get us pretty darn high up that mountain. But as a society, or as a country anyways, we're still arguing in base camp if we should leave or not. And so I guess it's just like giving, I think that if they really do care, then getting plugged in to protect our winters, or an organization that feels right to them,
Yeah.
and having, hey, we need you to do this, get out, knock on X amount of doors. You can't do that with COVID now, but your kids are probably like pretty digitally savvy at that age.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like your daughter gets to vote in her first election. So
She will. Yeah, she's into it.
yeah, so traditionally, that 18 to 25-year-old voter group is had very poor turnout. So she can do a lot by getting her peers to come out.
Yeah. No, that's good. Good stuff. Um, so, when you think about your life in the outdoors, what was your most memorable moment? Like when did you got to fall in love to protect the outdoors? What was that moment for you?
Yeah, so God, I mean, I would say there was a moment for me. So I started snowboarding in like mid '80s. There were no snowboard mags. There was no videos, no nothing. We had boards without bindings, no edges, and we basically taught ourselves how to snowboard, and we're very unsuccessful at that. It took me 3 years before I could link a turn on hard snow. And I remember we could trade in our snowboards and then pay the extra to get the next season's board. And Burton came out with the first board with a proper high back, metal edges, P-Tex.
Yeah.
And so I trade in my board for that and bring it home, hike this. We would go to the resorts after they closed, and 4 o'clock, between like 4 and 6 o'clock before it was dark. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to be able to turn now, and go out there and hike up really high and just crash harder than I've ever crashed, because now I'm going faster. And so I'm at like peak frustration of my 3 years of snowboarding, tears welling up in my eyes, and I just am like, run up again. It's getting dark, and totally end up going higher than I'd ever gone. I'm like, I just totally frustrated, and I drop in, and I still remember the exact spot. And for some reason, I figured out how to get on my front foot, tip it on edge, and I made my first real turn on hard snow, and then followed it up all the way down to the mountain, to the bottom of the mountain, and it just like clicked. I had it, and I was like, that's when hockey went away right then. It was like I went through a portal into this other world, and
Yeah.
kind of over from that
Using
point.
edges on skates probably helped you figure that out a little bit.
Yes.
That's great. How about, I just want to ask you one more thing. How about the social justice movement that's
Yeah,
happening
great.
right now? And I really appreciate we push this back in respect to that. And but I think everybody's been thinking about that in their life. And in your case with POW,
Yeah.
what are the discussions going on at POW right now? Like how, whether you can have an impact in that side, or I know environmental justice is becoming a big topic. How are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, so great question, and thank you for asking that. And that's a big question. So I'll try to simplify that as much as possible. But I would say my personal journey. I mean, I understand when you look at, you can think back to the images of Hurricane Katrina and the people stuck on rooftops and stuff. There's a disproportionate of Black people there. And then there's, this migrations that are happening due to, lack of food and lack of crop. There's lack of crops and stuff that's happening in Syria, disproportionate of people of color. But as I've dove into this even more, it's like I learned that 68% of Black people live within 35 miles of a coal-fired power plant, which means they have way more health issues. So they are disproportionately affected by it. They actually studies show they are want action on climate, more than white people by about 20%.
Wow.
And so I guess at Protect Our Winters and just the outdoors in general, and specifically skiing and snowboarding, we are a very white industry.
Yeah.
And I think there's, as at Jones Snowboards, we're working with a group outdoor, now I'm drawing a blank, outdoor advocacy. Outdoor outreach, sorry. But we had this snowboarder, Ryan Hudson, has been on the program from the beginning. And he literally was like, lived on the streets, and now is this really good snowboarder. So kind of empowering him he's like a total success story out of that, and trying, so we're building some stuff with him at Protect Our Winters. We have been on this process of bringing diversity into the board level and the Riders Alliance. And it's important to note that it's not because we need to look good and have diversity. We are more effective. The sports are cooler when they have more diversity. The opera is cooler with more diversity. So I think it's been a big blind spot for the outdoor industry, and it's been a big blind spot for the environmental movement, and learning lots about that. And I think that we're definitely on a marathon, not a sprint, and you will see, I think, in all facets of this. I think that this last, and it's sad that it's taken this latest atrocities to really wake people up, but I do feel like it's been a major awakening. And the stuff I'm involved in, you will see, a different path forward, a more inclusive path. But and a lot of these things will not be solved immediately. But it's actually some great opportunities moving forward.
definitely. So we got a few questions that came in here. So one's from Richard Mead, and he's asking one option for connecting with youth is a youth ambassador program. Northwest, I think it's Northwest Avalanche Center started 2 years ago doing that. Has POW considered this?
Yeah, so we've through the inception of POW, we've had this Hot Planet Cool Athlete where we've gone in with athletes into schools and talk about climate change. And God, I think on our biggest year, we were talking to over 10,000 kids a year doing that. And really, that is one of my favorite things to do at Protect Our Winners. Yeah. We've been, since 2016 was such a devastating blow to the climate movement that we went from what we consider peacetime to wartime. We watched over 200 regulations on CO2 emissions get rolled back. And so we sadly have had to dig deep on this 2020 election and have been building towards that. But hopefully we have start getting the right climate champions in office and can start focusing on the youth again.
Yeah, cool. So here's another question. I love this one. I struggle with having parents who don't believe in climate. They're in their mid-70s. Any suggestions on how I can change their minds?
God, so this film I'm working with, I have been interviewing staunch climate deniers, and it's been that's a hard thing to do. If the world scientific community can't convince them, it's really hard to be like, here's the silver bullet. I would more just try to urge them to vote for their grandchildren, and they've come up as the greatest generation, and I just think that it's we need to get the youth more involved. Traditionally, the 65 to 85-year-old demographic outvotes that 18 to 35 graphic 2-to-1. And so I don't know. I would try to. I guess one question is, what if you're wrong? What if the world scientific community is right? But it's a hard thing. I would try to find common ground, and even though maybe you struggle with that, they're still your parents, and I hope you can still be friends with them.
Yeah. I like the grandchildren. The grandchildren thing always works. That's a good one. Okay, got a couple more here. So this is from Ariel. I've never been snowboarding before, but have always wanted to try. I live in Southern California. What place would you suggest I choose for my first experience, or any advice to a newbie?
Yeah, so great question. So there is a bunch of small resorts, specifically where you live: Mountain High, Mount Baldy, Snow Summit, Bear Mountain. And I always say, specifically Mount Baldy, there's a couple days a year where the best day to snowboard, or the best place on that day to ride, is Mount Baldy when we get these southern storms. But there's this stigma that snowboarding and skiing is really expensive, which to go to Aspen for a week-long family vacation is ridiculously expensive. To go to these really small resorts, it is, the season pass is very affordable. We have one down the street from where I live. It's a $99 season pass. You can go to a local thrift store and get kitted out head to toe for for a couple $100. So start small, go to one of these mom and pop places, and have fun, and pick a soft day.
Right on. Good. Well, I think that's what we had for you. So really appreciate you jumping on, and really proud of all the work that you're doing. And it's been great to work a little bit with POW in the past, and with Global Inheritance. You guys are keeping us all honest. You're doing amazing stuff. So yeah, thanks. Just thanks for coming. And for those everybody else out there, don't forget to sign up for the movie club. It's free, and you can sign up at globalinheritance.org or on the link in the chat room. So everybody, stay safe and good luck with your next adventures. And yeah, thanks again. Take it easy.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, we'll hope to see some of you out there.